Captain Sarah Chun had seen many strange things during her 15 years of deep space exploration, but nothing had prepared her for the sight that greeted her through the observation deck windows of the exploration vessel Harmony. Floating in the void of space, surrounded by what appeared to be organic spacecraft that defied every known principle of engineering, was a massive dragon. Not a creature that looked like a dragon from Earth's mythology, but an actual dragon. Scales that shifted color like oil on water caught the light from distant stars, massive wings that somehow functioned in the vacuum of space, and eyes that held an intelligence so profound it made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. The dragon was easily 3 times the size of their ship, and Sarah's crew of 23 humans stood frozen at their stations, unsure whether they were witnessing first contact or their final moments. The creature's head turned slowly toward their vessel, and those ancient eyes seemed to look directly at Sarah through the reinforced viewing port. "Captain," whispered Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, her second-in-command, "sensors are detecting multiple similar life forms approaching our position. They're not showing up as hostile, but they're definitely surrounding us." Sarah forced herself to breathe steadily. This was what they had trained for, what humanity had dreamed of since first reaching for the stars. First contact with an intelligent alien species. She just never imagined it would involve dragons. "All stations, maintain current position," she ordered, her voice carrying across the bridge with practiced calm. "Do not power weapons. Do not make any aggressive moves. Dr. Rodriguez, are you getting any communication attempts?" Dr. Elena Rodriguez, their xenolinguist and communication specialist, hunched over her console with intense concentration. "I'm detecting something, Captain. It's not radio waves or any form of electromagnetic communication we recognize. It's almost like," she paused, frowning, "like they're trying to communicate through quantum fluctuations in space-time itself." The massive dragon outside seemed to sense their attempts to understand. It moved closer, its enormous form gliding through space with impossible grace. As it approached, Sarah could see smaller details that made her scientific mind reel. The creature's scales weren't just changing color randomly. They were forming patterns, almost like a visual language. "Dr. Rodriguez, are you seeing this?" Sarah asked, pointing toward the approaching dragon. "The patterns on its scales, yes." "Captain, I think it's trying to communicate with us visually. Give me a moment to run this through our pattern recognition software." The rest of the crew watched in tense silence as more dragons appeared around them. Each was unique in size and coloration, but all shared that same profound intelligence in their eyes. They arranged themselves in what could only be described as a formation, creating a rough circle around the human vessel. "Captain," called out Ensign Kim Park from the sensor station, "I'm reading something incredible. These creatures aren't just biological. They're generating their own energy fields. The smaller ones are actually creating breathable atmosphere around themselves. And the big one, Captain, it's generating enough power to light up a small city." Sarah's mind raced with the implications. These weren't just intelligent aliens. They were beings of incredible power and capability. The fact that they hadn't immediately attacked or fled suggested they were as curious about humanity as humans were about them. Dr. Rodriguez suddenly looked up from her console, her eyes wide with excitement. "Captain, I'm getting something through the pattern recognition system. It's crude, but I think they're asking about our intentions. The scale patterns keep repeating what translates roughly to purpose and journey." This was it. The moment that would define not just their mission, but possibly humanity's future among the stars. Sarah stepped forward, positioning herself directly in front of the main viewing port where the largest dragon could see her clearly. "Dr. Rodriguez, can you transmit visual patterns back to them? Use our external display arrays." "I could try, Captain. What do you want to say?" Sarah thought for a moment, considering not just her words, but the weight they carried. "Tell them we're explorers. Tell them we come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars." Dr. Rodriguez's fingers flew over her console, translating Sarah's words into visual patterns that appeared on the hull of their ship. The response from the dragons was immediate and remarkable. The largest dragon's scales shifted to display what could only be described as joy, brilliant golds, and warm blues cascading across its massive form. But then, something unexpected happened. The dragon began to move away, gesturing with its enormous head towards something in the distance. As it moved, the other dragons followed, maintaining their protective formation around the human ship. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Webb said urgently, "they want us to follow them." Through the viewing port, Sarah could see the dragons had arranged themselves into what was clearly an escort formation. The message was unmistakable. They were being invited somewhere. "All hands, prepare for movement," Sarah announced shipwide. "We're about to make history. Helm, match their speed and heading. Stay within the formation they've provided." As the Harmony began to move alongside the dragon escort, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the creature's grace in space. They moved as if swimming through an invisible ocean, their wings creating propulsion through methods that human science couldn't yet explain. "Captain, you need to see this," Dr. Rodriguez called out, her voice filled with wonder. "I've been analyzing their communication patterns, and it's not just visual. They're communicating through quantum entanglement, electromagnetic fields, gravitational waves, and at least 3 other methods our instruments can barely detect. These beings have mastered forms of communication we're only beginning to theorize about." The journey lasted several hours, during which the crew of the Harmony observed their escorts with growing amazement. The dragons worked together with a coordination that suggested not just intelligence, but a level of cooperation that exceeded anything humanity had achieved. When one dragon needed to rest, another would smoothly take its position. When debris appeared in their path, the larger dragons would use controlled energy bursts to clear the way for the smaller ones and the human ship. "They're protecting us," observed Chief Engineer Patricia Santos, watching the display screens with fascination. "Look how they're arranging themselves to shield us from stellar radiation. They've adapted their formation specifically to keep our ship safe." As they traveled deeper into unknown space, the crew began to notice changes in the environment around them. What had started as empty void began to show signs of construction. Massive crystalline structures appeared in the distance, glowing with internal light that seemed to pulse with life. "My God," whispered Dr. Rodriguez, "it's a city. A space city built by dragons." But calling it a city was like calling Earth's ocean a puddle. The structure they approached was vast beyond human comprehension, a sprawling metropolis of crystal and living light that extended in all directions. Organic-looking spires reached out like branches of an enormous tree, each one housing what appeared to be thousands of dragon inhabitants. The most remarkable thing was how it all seemed to breathe. The entire city pulsed with a gentle rhythm, as if it were a single living organism rather than a constructed habitat. Gardens of space-borne plants floated in protective energy fields between the spires, creating oases of green and blue in the cosmic dark. "Sensors are detecting millions of life signs," Captain Ensign Park reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "The biodiversity readings are off the charts. It's like they've created an entire ecosystem in space." As they approached the city, smaller dragons began to emerge from the various spires and structures. Unlike the massive escorts that had brought them here, these dragons varied enormously in size and appearance. Some were no larger than Earth horses, while others dwarfed buildings. Their scales displayed every color imaginable, and some that human eyes had never seen before. But what struck Sarah most was their behavior. Despite being faced with an alien species from an unknown world, the dragons showed no fear or aggression. Instead, they seemed genuinely curious and welcoming. Young dragons darted playfully around the human ship, their scales flashing with what could only be described as excitement. "Captain," Dr. Rodriguez said, monitoring the communication channels, "they're asking about our ship. They want to know about our technology, our culture, our home world. But there's something else. They're expressing concern about something." The translation is rough, but it seems they're worried about our safety, our survival. Before Sarah could respond, their massive escort began transmitting a complex series of patterns. Dr. Rodriguez worked frantically to translate, her brow furrowed in concentration. Captain, I think they want to show us something. Something about danger and gift? I'm sorry, the concepts don't translate well, but they definitely want us to follow them to a specific location within the city. The dragons guided the Harmony through the crystalline spires with careful precision, clearly taking a route that would allow the human crew to see as much of their civilization as possible. Through the viewing ports, Sarah's crew saw workshops where dragons crafted tools and art with their claws, nurseries where dragon younglings played games that involved manipulating energy fields, and gathering spaces where adult dragons engaged in what appeared to be philosophical discussions through complex light displays. They've built a paradise, Chief Santos said softly. Look at how they live. No poluição, no escassez, no conflict. They've achieved what humanity has dreamed of for centuries. But, as beautiful as the Dragon City was, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their hosts were troubled by something. The patterns in their communication carried an undercurrent of urgency that the translation software couldn't quite capture. Their destination became clear as they approached the heart of the city. A massive crystalline chamber, transparent on all sides, floated at the center of the metropolis like the hub of a great wheel. Inside, Sarah could see dozens of the largest dragons she had yet encountered, their scales displaying complex patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living text. It's their government, Dr. Rodriguez breathed. Or maybe their council of elders. Captain, they're inviting us inside. The invitation came as a gentle energy field that surrounded the Harmony, carefully drawing it into an airlock large enough to accommodate their entire ship. As they passed through multiple containment barriers, Sarah realized the dragons had created a perfect Earth atmosphere environment for their visit. How did they know? Lieutenant Commander Webb asked in amazement. How could they possibly know what we need to breathe? They scanned us during the approach, Dr. Rodriguez explained, reviewing her data, but not with anything invasive. It was so subtle our shields didn't even register it. They analyzed our ship's atmosphere and recreated it perfectly. As the Harmony settled onto a platform clearly designed to accommodate it, Sarah made a decision that would be debated by historians for generations to come. Against all protocols for first contact situations, she chose to trust these magnificent beings completely. All hands, prepare for contact, she announced. We're going to meet them face to face. The airlock of the Harmony opened to reveal a chamber that defied every expectation. The dragons had arranged themselves in a careful formation that was somehow both impressive and non-threatening. The largest among them, a magnificent creature whose scales held the depth of space itself, stepped forward. When it spoke, the words came not as sound, but as direct understanding, flowing into the minds of every human present. The sensation was gentle, warm, like having thoughts that were not quite your own. Welcome, children of distant stars. The dragon's mental voice carried warmth and ancient wisdom. We have waited long to meet another species that reaches toward the light. I am Stellarwing, first guardian of this realm, and I bear both celebration and sorrow for your arrival. Sarah stepped forward, fighting every instinct that told her she was standing before a being of godlike power. I am Captain Sarah Chun, representing humanity and our world Earth. We're honored by your welcome, Guardian Stellarwing. What sorrow do you speak of? The great dragon's scales shifted to display complex patterns that somehow conveyed deep concern. Your species travels the void in ships of metal and fire, brave but fragile. We have watched your kind on distant worlds, seen how you struggle against the harsh realities of space. Your courage honors you, but courage alone cannot protect you from what comes. Other dragons began to add their own patterns to the communication, creating a symphony of light and meaning that Dr. Rodriguez struggled to interpret. The message that emerged was both incredible and terrifying. They're warning us about something called the Void Hunters, Dr. Rodriguez translated, her face pale. Entities that consume entire civilizations. They're coming to our sector of space, and she paused, double-checking her translation. They say humanity's current technology won't be enough to survive the encounter. Stellarwing's great head nodded slowly, a remarkably human gesture from such an alien being. The hunters move between galaxies, leaving only emptiness behind. Worlds, civilizations, entire species, all become fuel for their endless hunger. They have found your galaxy, and they move toward the worlds of young life. The weight of this revelation settled on Sarah's crew like a physical burden. Humanity had just achieved faster-than-light travel, had barely begun to explore beyond their own solar system, and now they were facing a threat that could end their species entirely. But Stellarwing wasn't finished. However, children of Earth, we did not bring you here to despair. We brought you here to offer hope. Your species has something rare in the galaxy, the spark of growth that burns bright even in darkness. We have watched humanity through the quantum streams, seen how you protect your young, care for your weak, and stand together against overwhelming odds. This is why we make an offer that we have never made before. The great dragon gestured with one wing toward the far end of the chamber, where something massive waited under a covering of what appeared to be crystallized starlight. We offer you a gift that may preserve your kind and transform your destiny among the stars. As the covering dissolved into motes of light, Sarah and her crew gasped in unison. Before them stood a ship unlike anything in human imagination. It was clearly of dragon construction, organic curves blending seamlessly with crystalline technologies, but sized and configured for human occupants. The vessel radiated power that made their exploration ship seem like a canoe beside an aircraft carrier. This is the Starwood Hope, Stellarwing explained, crafted by our greatest artisans and enhanced with technologies your species will need to survive what comes. It carries weapons that can wound the hunters, shields that can withstand their assault, and knowledge that will help your people prepare for the war that is coming. Sarah's mind reeled with the implications. This wasn't just first contact. It was a complete transformation of humanity's place in the galaxy. Guardian, this gift is beyond anything we could have hoped for. But why? Why would your people do this for strangers? The dragon scales shifted to display what Sarah somehow knew was the equivalent of a gentle smile. Because kindness shared across the void makes us all stronger. Because your species reminds us of ourselves when we were young and reaching for the stars. And because the alternative, watching another bright civilization fade into darkness, is unbearable to those who have seen it happen too many times before. Other dragons began to approach, each carrying gifts of knowledge and technology. Crystal data cores that contained star charts of safe passages through space, defensive technologies that could protect Earth itself, and communication devices that would allow humanity to call for aid across impossible distances. But the greatest gift was yet to come. A young dragon, barely larger than a human, approached Sarah with something glowing in its claws. When it extended the object toward her, Sarah saw it was a scale, but not just any scale. This one pulsed with living light and seemed to contain depths of knowledge that could take lifetimes to explore. A memory scale, Stellarwing explained. It contains everything we have learned about the hunters, their weaknesses, their patterns of attack. More than that, it contains the history of our own people's growth from a single world to the guardians of this sector. Your species will need to grow quickly, and this will show you the path we took. As Sarah accepted the scale, she felt a brief connection to the vast network of dragon consciousness. For just a moment, she experienced the galaxy as the dragons did, not as a cold void to be crossed, but as a living ecosystem where every species had value and purpose. The sensation faded, but the memory of that connection remained. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. They had found not just aliens, but guardians, teachers, and friends who are willing to share their greatest treasures to help a young species survive. There is more, Stellarwing continued, but first, your people must choose. The ship we offer comes with responsibility. You will become defenders not just of humanity, but of all young life in this sector. The dragons are ancient and powerful, but we are few. Your species breeds quickly, adapts rapidly, and fights with a ferocity that even we respect. Together, we might stand against the darkness. Sarah looked around at her crew, seeing her own wonder and determination reflected in their faces. This was bigger than their mission, bigger than Earth itself. This was about the future of life in the galaxy. Guardian Stellarwing, she said formally, I accept your gift on behalf of humanity, and I pledge that we will honor the responsibility that comes with it. But I need to ask, how much time do we have before these hunters arrive? The great dragon's scales darkened to a deep blue that somehow conveyed urgency. By your measurements, perhaps 50 of your years. Enough time for your species to prepare, to build fleets, to transform your civilization. But only if you begin immediately and follow the path we will show you. 50 years. It seemed like a long time and no time at all. Sarah realized that when they returned to Earth, everything would change. Humanity would need to unite as never before to focus all their resources and creativity on survival and growth. But they would not face this challenge alone. As she looked around the crystal chamber at the magnificent beings who had chosen to help them, Sarah felt a surge of hope that transcended her fear. Humanity had found allies among the stars, and together they would face whatever came. The dragons began to gather around the gifted ship, their scales displaying patterns of instruction and guidance. The real education was about to begin, and Sarah knew that by the time they returned to Earth, her crew would be the first humans trained in technologies and knowledge that would transform their species forever. As preparations began for the most important journey in human history, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at how kindness from strangers had shattered every assumption about humanity's place in the universe. The dragons had given them more than a ship. They had given them a future among the stars. The training began immediately. Sarah and her crew spent the next 3 weeks aboard the Dragon City, learning technologies that would have taken human science centuries to develop independently. The Starwood Hope became their classroom, laboratory, and glimpse into humanity's potential future. Dr. Rodriguez proved particularly adept at understanding the ship's communication systems. The vessel didn't just have computers. It had what the dragons called thought silk, crystalline networks that could interface directly with human consciousness while still maintaining the user's individual identity and free will. It's incredible, she explained to Sarah as they stood on the ship's bridge, which looked more like a garden than a control room. The ship can read our intentions and respond before we even finish forming the thought. But it never overrides our decisions or makes choices for us. It's like having the most intuitive tool imaginable. Lieutenant Commander Webb had taken to the ship's defensive systems with the enthusiasm of a child discovering a new toy. The weapons weren't projectile-based like human technology, but instead manipulated fundamental forces of physics. Gravity wells, electromagnetic pulses, and energy fields that could disrupt matter at the molecular level, all controlled through intuitive gestures and focused thought. The dragons call it harmony fighting, Webb explained during a practice session. You don't fight against the universe, you work with it. Watch this. He gestured toward a training target, and the ship responded by creating a localized gravity field that crushed the target into a sphere no larger than a marble. The energy requirement is minimal because we're using natural forces that already exist. But it was Chief Engineer Santos who made the discovery that would change everything about humanity's understanding of space travel. While examining the ship's propulsion system, she found something that defied every law of physics she knew. "Captain, you need to see this," she called from the engine room, her voice filled with excitement and disbelief. "This ship doesn't just travel through space. It travels through the connections between space. The dragons have found a way to use what they call love paths, quantum entanglement on a galactic scale. Sarah joined Santos in the engine room, where crystalline structures pulsed with soft light. The space felt alive, warm, and somehow comforting in a way that human engineering never achieved. The dragons explained it to me through the thought silk, Santos continued. Every act of kindness, every connection between conscious beings, creates quantum entanglements that persist across space and time. The ship uses these connections as highways, allowing us to travel instantly between any 2 points where positive connections exist. The implications were staggering. Humanity wouldn't just be getting faster ships, they would be getting a transportation network based on the bonds between civilizations. Every friendship, every act of cooperation, every moment of understanding between species would create new pathways through space. But there's more, Santos added. The system works both ways. When we help other species, when we create positive connections, we're literally building the infrastructure for galactic civilization. The dragons haven't just been protecting younger species out of kindness. They've been building the largest transportation and communication network in the galaxy. Sarah felt a chill of understanding. This was why the dragons were so willing to help humanity, why they saw such potential in Earth species. Humans, with their capacity for forming bonds with anyone and anything, could become the ultimate network builders. But their education wasn't limited to technology. The dragons also shared their history, their failures, and their hard-learned wisdom about survival in a hostile galaxy. Stellar Wing often visited them during their training, sharing stories through the ship's thought silk system. Sarah found these sessions both inspiring and sobering. We were not always as we are now. The great dragon's mental voice carried the weight of millennia. When we first reached the stars, we were conquerors. We believed that strength meant domination, that survival required the subjugation of others. We nearly destroyed ourselves and 3 other species before we learned the truth. The images that accompanied his words showed a younger galactic civilization, one where the dragons had indeed been fearsome predators. Worlds burned under dragon fire. Species fled their home planets to escape dragon conquest, and the galaxy grew darker and more dangerous with each passing century. What changed? Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. We met the crystalline minds of Andromeda 7, Stellar Wing replied, his scales shifting to display patterns of profound regret and gratitude. A species we had conquered and enslaved for their world's resources. But instead of fighting us, they showed us kindness. They cared for our wounded, shared their food with our hungry, and taught our young the beauty of creation over destruction. The images shifted to show dragons learning to build instead of burn, to protect instead of conquer. It was a transformation that took thousands of years, but the results were evident in every aspect of dragon civilization. The crystalline minds taught us that true strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. They showed us that a galaxy where everyone thrives is infinitely more powerful than one where only the strong survive. By the time we understood their lesson fully, they had given us a gift greater than any technology. They had given us purpose. What happened to them? Dr. Rodriguez asked quietly. Stellar Wing's scales darkened with sorrow. They were among the first victims of the Void Hunters. Their compassion made them vulnerable. Their trust in the goodness of others became their weakness when faced with entities that feel nothing but hunger. We arrived too late to save them, found only empty worlds where once great cities had stood. The lesson was clear. Kindness and compassion were the highest virtues, but they needed to be protected by strength and wisdom. The dragons had learned to be both gentle teachers and fierce guardians, a balance that humanity would need to master quickly. During the 4th week of training, something unexpected happened. A young dragon named Quicksilver, barely old enough to fly between the city's spires, approached Sarah with a request that would change the course of human history. Captain Chun, The young dragon's mental voice was bright with excitement. I want to come with you. To Earth. To meet more humans and help prepare for what's coming. The request caught everyone off guard. First contact was one thing, but having an alien, even a friendly alien, actually visit Earth was an entirely different matter. The political, social, and practical implications were enormous. Stellarwing arrived quickly, his scales displaying what Sarah had learned to recognize as parental concern mixed with pride. Quicksilver speaks truly of her desires, but the choice is not hers alone to make. Such a journey would require careful preparation and the agreement of both our species. Sarah found herself in an impossible position. As a ship captain, she had the authority to invite passengers aboard. As Earth's representative, she had to consider the impact of bringing a dragon to humanity's homeworld. As a person who had come to care deeply for these magnificent beings, she wanted to say yes immediately. Guardian, she said carefully, what would such a visit involve? What would Quicksilver need to survive on Earth? Very little, the young dragon replied before Stellarwing could answer. I can adapt my biology to any environment, and I'm small enough to avoid frightening your people. I want to learn about human music and art and food and games. I want to understand how a species so young can be so brave and creative. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, her scientific mind racing with possibilities. The cultural exchange potential is incredible. Quicksilver could help us understand dragon technology and perspective while learning about human creativity and adaptability. It would accelerate our preparation for the hunters by decades. But Lieutenant Commander Webb raised the obvious concern. Captain, imagine the panic if a dragon suddenly appeared over Earth's major cities. Our governments aren't ready for this. Our people aren't ready for this. Stellarwing's scales shifted to display understanding and agreement. The young one's enthusiasm outpaces her wisdom. But perhaps there's another way. The great dragon turned to Sarah with what she had learned to recognize as hope. What if the introduction were gradual? What if Quicksilver remained with your ship until your people were prepared to meet her properly? Sarah realized they were talking about more than just a visit. They were discussing the first permanent ambassador between species, the first step toward true galactic citizenship for humanity. I'll need to consult with Earth, she said finally. But personally, I think it's an incredible opportunity. Quicksilver would be safer with us than trying to make such a journey alone later, and having a dragon's perspective during our preparations could be invaluable. The young dragon's scales erupted in patterns of pure joy, cycling through every color Sarah had ever seen, and several she was sure human eyes had never witnessed before. I promise to be helpful. I can teach you to sing with light, and show you how to grow gardens in space, and help you understand the love paths between stars. Over the following days, preparations began for what was being called the Great Return, humanity's journey back to Earth with knowledge and gifts that would transform their species forever. But now it would be more than just a return. It would be the beginning of humanity's true entry into galactic civilization. The Dragons worked tirelessly to modify the Starwood Hope for its new crew member. They created a special chamber where Quicksilver could maintain the energy field she needed for long-term health, installed communication systems that would allow her to speak directly with Earth's leaders, and added cultural databases that would help her understand human society before arrival. But the most important preparations were the ones Sarah couldn't see. Stellarwing and the other Elder Dragons spent long hours with Quicksilver, sharing wisdom about diplomacy, patience, and the delicate work of building bridges between species. They were preparing her not just for a visit, but for a mission that could determine the future of both civilizations. During their final week at the Dragon City, Sarah received an unexpected honor. The dragons held what they called a joining ceremony, a ritual that marked the creation of permanent bonds between different species or groups. The entire city gathered for the event, dragons of every size and description filling the crystalline chambers and floating platforms. The ceremony itself was unlike anything from Earth's cultures, combining music that could be felt rather than heard, light patterns that told the story of both species, and a sharing of consciousness that left every participant with a permanent connection to the others. Today, the children of Earth become children of the galaxy, Stellarwing announced, his voice carrying to every dragon in the city. Today, the guardians of this realm gain new siblings in the family of sentient life. Let the bonds formed here strengthen both our species for the challenges to come. Sarah found herself at the center of a vast web of dragon consciousness, feeling the hopes and fears and dreams of an entire civilization flowing through her mind. But more than that, she felt their love, a deep, abiding affection for life itself that had driven them to become protectors rather than predators. When the ceremony ended, Sarah realized that she and her crew had been fundamentally changed. They weren't just humans anymore. They were galactic citizens, connected to a network of consciousness that spanned star systems. The gifts continued even as departure time approached. Each member of Sarah's crew received personal items from their dragon teachers, tools, art, and knowledge crystals that would help them share what they had learned with the rest of humanity. Dr. Rodriguez received a translation matrix that would allow her to communicate with any species the dragons had encountered. Lieutenant Commander Webb was given weapons training simulations that would help him teach Earth's military the principles of harmony fighting. Chief Santos received engineering databases that contained the technical knowledge to transform human industry and technology. But Sarah's gift was perhaps the most important. Stellarwing presented her with what appeared to be a simple crystal pendant, but she could feel the power contained within it. "This is a council stone," the great dragon explained. "It will allow you to call upon the wisdom and aid of any dragon elder, regardless of distance. When your species faces its greatest challenges, when the weight of leadership becomes too much to bear alone, speak to the stone, and we will answer." As the Starwood Hope prepared to depart, the entire dragon city gathered to see them off. It was a sight that would remain with Sarah forever. Thousands of magnificent beings filling space around their ship, their scales creating patterns of farewell and encouragement that painted the cosmos in living light. Quicksilver took her place aboard the ship with excitement barely contained. She had shrunk herself to roughly human size for the journey, though her scales still shifted through impossible colors, and her eyes held depths that spoke of ancient wisdom despite her youth. "Are you ready for this?" Sarah asked the young dragon as the ship began to move away from the city. Quicksilver's scales displayed what Sarah had learned was the dragon equivalent of a determined smile. "I've been ready my entire life. I just didn't know what I was ready for until now." As the dragon city fell behind them and the Starwood Hope activated its love path drive for the journey to Earth, Sarah reflected on everything that had changed. 3 weeks ago, they had been explorers hoping to find signs of life among the stars. Now, they were returning as ambassadors carrying the future of human civilization in their hands. But more than that, they were returning as living proof that kindness could indeed shatter reality, at least the limited reality humanity had previously accepted. The universe wasn't a cold, hostile place where species competed for resources and survival. It was a community where the strong protected the weak, where knowledge was shared freely, and where friendship could literally create paths between the stars. The journey to Earth would take several days, even with dragon technology. But Sarah knew that when they arrived, nothing would ever be the same. Humanity was about to take its place among the guardians of the galaxy, ready or not. As she settled into the captain's chair of a ship beyond human imagination, with a dragon passenger who represented the hopes of an entire civilization, Sarah realized that kindness hadn't just shattered their reality. It had revealed the much larger and more wonderful reality that had been waiting for them all along. The moment the Starwood Hope dropped out of the Love Path network at the edge of Earth's solar system, every space monitoring station on the planet detected an energy signature unlike anything in human records. The ship's arrival triggered emergency protocols across 6 nations and sent the International Space Monitoring Coalition into crisis mode. Sarah stood on the bridge of the impossible vessel, watching familiar stars appear on the viewing screen, and felt the weight of what was about to happen. In a matter of hours, humanity would learn they were not alone in the universe. Everything from religion to politics to basic assumptions about life itself would be challenged and changed forever. Captain, Dr. Rodriguez called from her station. I'm receiving multiple hails from Earth. They want to know who we are, and we got this ship. Admiral Chun is personally demanding an explanation. Sarah smiled at the mention of her father, Admiral James Chun, commander of Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Network. She had known this moment would be complicated, but she hadn't expected to be explaining alien contact to her own family first. Open a channel, Dr. Rodriguez. Time to make history. Quicksilver moved closer to Sarah, her scales shifting to display nervous excitement. The young dragon had spent the journey studying human culture through the ship's databases, but she was still worried about the reception she might receive. What if they're afraid of me? Quicksilver asked, her mental voice carrying genuine concern. What if they think I'm dangerous? Sarah placed a reassuring hand on the dragon's scaled neck, marveling again at how warm and alive the creature felt. Some of them will be afraid at first, but humans have an incredible capacity to adapt and accept new things. Once they see that you're here to help, most will welcome you. The communication channel crackled to life, and Admiral Chen's familiar voice filled the bridge. Unidentified vessel. This is Admiral Chun of Earth Space Command. You're operating technology that doesn't appear in any of our databases. Identify yourself immediately and explain your presence in Earth space. Sarah took a deep breath. Hello, Dad. This is Captain Sarah Chun aboard the exploration vessel. Well, formerly the Harmony. I'm afraid we have a very long story to tell, and it's going to sound impossible. The silence that followed stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When Admiral Chin finally spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. Sarah? Sarah, is that really you? Your ship was reported missing 3 months ago. Where the hell have you been? Meeting dragons, Dad. And learning that humanity is about to join a galactic civilization, whether we're ready or not. Before Admiral Chun could respond, alerts began sounding across the ship's bridge. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her console with alarm. Captain, I'm detecting multiple spacecraft approaching our position. They're not broadcasting friendly intentions. Through the viewing screen, Sarah could see the approaching vessels, sleek, black ships that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. There was something wrong about them, something that made her skin crawl just looking at them. Quicksilver's scales suddenly shifted to deep red patterns that Sarah had learned indicated extreme danger. The young dragon's voice carried urgent alarm. Captain, those are Hunter Scouts. They're not supposed to be here for decades. Lieutenant Commander Webb was already at the weapons station, his hands moving through the Harmony fighting gestures the dragons had taught him. Captain, should I power weapons? Sarah's mind raced with implications. If the Void Hunters had arrived early, if Earth was about to be attacked before humanity had time to prepare, then everything the dragons had planned would be meaningless. But she also realized this might be exactly the demonstration Earth needed to understand the reality of their situation. Dr. Rodriguez, give me a direct line to Earth's military command. All frequencies, all networks. Everyone needs to hear this. Sarah moved to the center of the bridge, knowing that in the next few minutes she would either save her home world or watch it die. Webb, prepare defensive measures, but do not fire unless fired upon. Quicksilver, can you contact the dragons? Already trying, the young dragon replied, her scales now pulsing with rapid communication patterns. But they're very far away, and the hunters are jamming the love paths. We're on our own. The black ships arranged themselves in an attack formation around the Starwood Hope, their weapons powering up with energy readings that made Earth's most advanced missiles look like firecrackers. But they seem to be waiting for something, studying the ship and its impossible technology. This is Captain Sarah Chun to all Earth forces. She broadcast on every available channel. What you're about to witness is first contact with hostile alien forces. The ships surrounding us are called Void Hunters, and they consume entire civilizations for energy. We have obtained alien technology specifically to defend against them, and we need Earth's cooperation to survive what's coming. The response from Earth was immediate chaos. Multiple voices try to speak at once, demanding explanations, ordering the ship to surrender, asking for proof, and generally creating a cacophony of confusion that reflected humanity's complete unpreparedness for this moment. But then, one voice cut through the noise. Admiral Chun, speaking with the calm authority that had made him Earth's highest-ranking military officer. All stations, maintain communication discipline. Sarah, I don't understand what's happening, but those black ships are powering weapons that our sensors can't even classify. What do you need from us? Before Sarah could answer, the hunters attacked. Beams of darkness that seemed to drain energy from space itself lanced toward the Starwood Hope. But Webb was ready, using the ship's defensive systems to create gravity fields that bent the attacks away from their target. Shields holding, he reported, but, Captain, these things are powerful. I can't protect the ship and Earth at the same time if more of them show up. Quicksilver suddenly brightened, her scales shifting to patterns of hope and excitement. Captain, I'm getting a response from the dragons. They felt the hunter attack through the quantum streams. Help is coming, but it will take time to arrive. Sarah made a decision that would be studied by military historians for generations. Instead of running or hiding, she chose to turn the crisis into a teaching moment for her entire species. Dr. Rodriguez opened channels to every major news network on Earth. The whole planet needs to see this. Sarah moved to face the main communication array, knowing that billions of humans were about to watch their first space battle. People of Earth, what you're seeing is our future. These hunters travel between galaxies, consuming civilizations. We have allies among the stars willing to help us, but we need to transform our entire civilization to survive. The battle became a deadly dance among the stars. Webb used the ship's weapons to create demonstration after demonstration of technology that surpassed human understanding. Gravity weapons that crushed hunter craft, energy shields that turned their attacks into harmless light shows, and mobility systems that allowed the Starwood Hope to move in ways that defied physics. But the hunters were adapting, learning from each exchange. More of their ships began appearing at the edge of the solar system, their black hulls drinking in starlight as they prepared for a coordinated assault. Sarah, Admiral Chen's voice was tight with stress. Our instruments are detecting at least 30 more of those ships incoming. Whatever you're doing, do it faster. That's when Quicksilver did something that would be remembered forever in human history. The young dragon positioned herself in front of the ship's main communication array and spoke directly to Earth's population. Her mental voice, carried by the ship's systems to every radio and television on the planet, was gentle, warm, and completely unafraid. Oh, humans, I am Quicksilver of the Dragon Guard. I have come to your world because your species has something beautiful that the galaxy needs, the courage to care for strangers. The effect was immediate and profound. Every human on Earth was suddenly in direct mental contact with an alien intelligence. But instead of fear or confusion, most felt an overwhelming sense of peace and hope. Quicksilver's natural empathy, enhanced by dragon technology, created an emotional connection that transcended language and culture. The beings attacking us are called Void Hunters. Quicksilver continued, her mental voice reaching into homes and offices and schools across the planet. They feel nothing but hunger, understand nothing but consumption. But you're different. You create beauty, share knowledge, and protect those weaker than yourselves. This is why the dragons have chosen to help you become guardians of other young civilizations. As Quicksilver spoke, something extraordinary happened. The Love Path Network, strengthened by the emotional connections she was creating with billions of humans simultaneously, began to respond. Pathways of quantum entanglement that had been jammed by the hunters suddenly reopened, carried by the sheer volume of positive emotions flowing from Earth. And through those pathways came the dragons. They arrived not as individual ships, but as a coordinated fleet that seemed to materialize out of starlight itself. Hundreds of dragon craft, each one unique, but all sharing the organic beauty that characterized their civilization, appeared around Earth in perfect defensive formation. Stellarwing's voice reached every human mind through Quicksilver's connection. People of Earth, we welcome you to the galactic community. Today, you face your first test as citizens of the wider universe. Today, you learn that you are not alone in the dark. The battle that followed lasted only minutes, but demonstrated the power of cooperation between species. Human military forces, guided by dragon tactical knowledge transmitted through the Starwood Hope, coordinated with dragon ships to create a defensive strategy neither species could have managed alone. The key moment came when Sarah realized the hunters were trying to reach Earth itself, planning to drain the planet's life energy to fuel their continued expansion. Working with Quicksilver and the Dragon Fleet, she developed a plan that required perfect timing and absolute trust. Dr. Rodriguez, I need you to synchronize every human-made satellite and space station with the Dragon Communication Network. Lieutenant Webb, prepare to extend our shields planet-wide. This is going to require every ounce of power we can generate. What happened next became known as the Moment of Unity, the first time in human history that the entire species worked together toward a single goal. Every space-based facility, every solar collector, every nuclear reactor on Earth synchronized their output through the Dragon Network, creating a protective field around the planet that no hunter weapon could penetrate. The hunters, faced with unified resistance from two species working in perfect harmony, made a tactical withdrawal. They disappeared back into deep space, but not before transmitting data about human capabilities to their main fleet. They'll be back, Stellarwing warned as the immediate danger passed. But now they know that Earth is protected, that humanity has allies. They will plan more carefully, bring more ships. Your species has bought time, but the real war is yet to come. As the Dragon Fleet took positions around Earth, and the Starwood Hope was escorted to a specially prepared facility in Earth orbit, Sarah finally had a chance to process what had happened. In the space of a few hours, humanity had made first contact, survived their first space battle, and entered into a military alliance with an alien species. But more than that, they had proven themselves worthy of the dragon's faith. When faced with impossible odds, humans had chosen to trust, to cooperate, and to fight not just for their own survival, but for the principle that life was worth defending. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change that transformed human civilization at a pace no one had thought possible. Dragon technology began flowing to Earth through carefully managed channels, while human creativity and adaptability impressed even the ancient dragons. Quicksilver became Earth's first alien ambassador, spending her days meeting with world leaders, scientists, and artists. Her natural curiosity and enthusiasm for human culture made her an instant favorite with the media, and her genuine care for humanity's welfare helped ease the transition to a new cosmic reality. Your species is remarkable, she told Sarah during one of their evening conversations aboard the Starwood Hope. The dragons are powerful and wise, but you humans have something we've never had, the ability to completely change yourselves when necessary. In 3 weeks, you've transformed your entire civilization. It took us 3,000 years to make similar changes. Sarah smiled, watching Earth turn below them through the observation deck windows. Cities that had once competed for resources were now sharing technology and information freely. Nations that had been enemies were working together to build the planetary defense grid that would protect all humanity. We had good teachers, she replied, and a really excellent incentive to learn quickly. Dr. Rodriguez joined them on the observation deck, carrying a datapad filled with the day's reports. "Captain, you should see the latest updates from the construction yards. We're ahead of schedule on the first human-dragon hybrid ships. The cooperation between our species is exceeding all projections." It was true. Human engineers working with dragon artisans were creating vessels that combined the best of both civilizations. Ships that had the intuitive grace of dragon technology with the practical efficiency of human design. Fleets that would be capable of not just defending Earth, but of helping other young civilizations survive their own encounters with the hunters. But perhaps the most important change was in humanity itself. The knowledge that they were part of a larger galactic community, that their actions affected not just Earth but other worlds and species, had given humans a sense of purpose and unity that had been missing from their civilization. Children learned dragon language alongside their native tongues. Artists created works inspired by cosmic perspectives that previous generations could never have imagined. Scientists made breakthrough after breakthrough as dragon knowledge opened new frontiers of understanding. And through it all, the Love Path network grew stronger. Every friendship between human and dragon, every moment of cooperation, every shared laugh or tear created new connections that would allow instantaneous travel and communication across the galaxy. Standing on the observation deck of an impossible ship, with a dragon friend beside her, and the future of her species stretching out among the stars, Sarah reflected on how a single act of kindness from strangers had transformed everything. The dragons could have ignored humanity, could have let them face the hunters alone and unprepared. Instead, they had chosen to share their greatest treasures and deepest wisdom. "Quicksilver," Sarah said, "I want you to know that no matter what happens in the coming war, humanity will never forget what your people have done for us. We'll spend the rest of our existence trying to be worthy of your faith in us." The young dragon's scales shifted to patterns of deep affection and eternal friendship. "Captain, I think you already are. The kindness you showed when you first met us, the trust you demonstrated by accepting our gifts, the courage you've shown in preparing your people for the challenges ahead, these things prove that our faith was well placed." As Earth turned beneath them and the stars stretched out in all directions, the three of them stood in comfortable silence, each thinking about the future they were helping to build. A future where kindness would be the foundation of galactic civilization, where species would stand together against the dark, and where the bonds between friends could literally reshape reality itself. The Void Hunters were still out there, planning their return. Other young civilizations across the galaxy were facing their own first encounters with cosmic threats. The work of building a truly united galactic community was just beginning. But humanity was no longer alone in the dark, and they never would be again. The dragons had seen to that with a single, impossible act of kindness, the gift of a starship and the friendship that came with it. And that Sarah realized was how reality should work. Not through conquest or domination, but through understanding and cooperation. Not through fear and isolation, but through trust and shared purpose. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but it was also full of friends waiting to be discovered. As the Starwood Hope began its next mission, a journey to help another young species prepare for their own trials, Sarah knew that humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. They had learned to reach for the stars, but more importantly, they had learned to help others reach for them too.